Okay, hashtag MRA. Men's rights. What the fuck is that? I know. Okay, I've gotten a few emails, and really this is just a quick video, really for men who are going through civil trials, or what I call hashtag MRA. Now, hashtag MRA, it just stands for men's rights activists, and there's all kinds of documentaries coming out that are speaking to the need, the critical need of men's rights and men's equity. Like, for example, go check out the Red Pill documentary. I mean, I've promoted that one extensively on this channel. And there's also a new documentary called Divorce Court, Corp, C-O-R-P, and it's really speaking to the corruption of the Texas civil system, or excuse me, the civil system as a whole. And for those who aren't familiar with the Texas civil system or the civil system, it's basically what, there's kind of this illusionary division in law. Like there's a criminal and then there's a civil, and it's really an artificial frame, if you will. Let me kind of speak to that briefly, because I want to give some advice to other men's rights activists, or maybe men who will become a men's rights activist. I've gotten a few emails from people that are like, hey dude, can you help me out? And I'm like, yeah, you can pay me for my services, and this is what the men's divorce kit would cost, and this is why it's important. And for example, I got an email from a guy, and he said, it's really funny how men, they say that, women are crazy, men are dumb. So men will they'll get filleted in the civil system, and then when they're searching for answers, they'll jump on YouTube looking for information like 2503 and what is a federally protected status, and is it relevant? And then when I'm like, yeah, you need to pay me $3,000 for my basically, where I'm putting a pamphlet together to help equip you for either your divorce modification, or perhaps you're moving into a divorce, or perhaps you're, whatever stage you're at. And really, if you're not familiar with my story, my name is Jonathan Fibonacci, and I went through I'm now in the second year of my civil system, or my civil case. And basically, to make a long story short, there's a quote that I love that I think it should frame the men's rights activist movement. And it simply is this. It says, what do you call a rebel? And it's simply a man who says no. So if you go into your divorce or your civil case and you use the word no to your ex-wife, then get ready. You need to be armed and prepared for the battle that you're gonna face. Like, for example, let me give you a real life example, because I could talk to you about my divorce kit and why you need to buy it. It's actually $2,800. There was a guy that emailed me. He's like, hey, I got a very complicated Texas 2503. And if you're not familiar with Texas 2503, it's one of the few laws that, if they enforced it, would solve 80% of the men's rights problems. I mean, in fact, let me go this. I would say 80% of the problems that men face in civil trials, let me be very clear about this, 80% of the drama, the judicial resources, would be solved if Texas 2503 were enforced. But guess what? Texas 2503 is not enforced, and it relates to visitation, and it's a critical law, and it's so critical that cops as a whole simply do not enforce it, because enforcing it, they would have to take these girls to jail and their families. In my situation, my ex-wife's from Muleshoe, Texas. It's a little town out there in West Texas, and I have information, or I have data. There's about 10 people in her family that if the Rice Monkey or the police chief were to enforce Texas 2503, there would be 10 people that would go to jail tomorrow. And you just have to Google Texas Criminal Code 2503. And out of those 10 people, about 5 of them, or maybe 8 of them, would actually be charged with felonies, because if 2503 is violated, if you move out of state lines to interfere with custody, that's actually a felony. And I'm talking even like the superintendent, who was my ex-wife's uncle. And so Texas 2503 is a critical problem. And I had a guy email me recently. He's like, hey, can you help me, dude? And he's talking about 2503, and he calls it complicated. And I, of course, responded with, well, you could buy my Texas, you can buy my divorce kit which is really all my experience deduced down to about 2 and 3 and 4 pages, that really arms you and prepares you for the battle ahead. And of course, he didn't respond because what he's really looking for is for me to solve 2503. What I really probably should have said to him, and what I'll say to you, is Google El Paso 2503. There's a news station out there where they're interviewing the police chief of Houston. And if you watch it, it's a really good piece about, fathers' rights and the inequities that men face in civil cases. It's not just in Texas. That's just where my case is. I can help anybody anywhere in the United States. I just have to do a little bit more research to find the equivalent, your state's equivalent to 2503. Well, back to this El Paso police chief. Whenever they pressed him on 2503, and why aren't you fucking enforcing this? He said, well, it's complicated. Well, now that I got you Googling, Google Lubbock Police Chief Federal Inquiry. And that's just an example where a police chief violated another, it's a different police chief in a different city, Lubbock, Texas. If you Google Lubbock, Texas Police Inquiry or Federal Inquiry, you will see how the police chief in that town was violating a federally protected status of race. And guess what happened to that guy? He was demoted or fired because it's a violation to not enforce a federally protected status. The problem with fathers' rights and the problem with 2503 and the MRA movement is nobody really believes that gender is a federally protected class that applies to men. In fact, test me in that. Go find 10 people and just bring up men's rights, or just bring up gender equality. Just maybe you're out at work, or maybe you're talking to somebody on Facebook, and just use the words gender equality. And notice that most of the responses, about 98% of the responses, are going to be relative to women who are needing help. Well, gender applies to men, and I was actually threatened with jail whatever in my civil case. I implied, and I said, I think gender applies to men in a civil case, and that's actually the law. So men's rights, we are about 10 years away from equality, in my opinion. Hopefully, we can, some of these documentaries can be taken seriously and people can start looking at it. And then once some of these greedy ass lawyers start recognizing that the answer is to file federal petitions against local municipalities, local schools, and local cities, and even family members. Once lawyers start thinking federally protected statuses that apply to men, that's when you're going to see the men's rights movements actually making progress. So what do you do now? Well, one thing you could do is you can hire me to be your MRA advocate and buy my Texas divorce kit and really look at the law. Let me explain the law. And this is why it's so important that you buy this kit. Again, it's $2,800. That's kind of the base fee. There's some other things that I could add, but again, if I can help you avoid what I've gone through, then it's worth $2,800. In fact, another person emailed me and he said that he had spent $75,000 on his lawyer. And then here he's emailing me and he's looking for help. I'm like, well, yeah, buy my kit. And here's some other things you could do to help protect yourself. And the problem is that people want to go to lawyers and they want to discuss lawyers who, in most cases, if you walked into your average lawyer and asked them, how many cases have you won for men relative to a federally protected class, namely that of gender, they wouldn't know what the fuck you're talking about. I mean, in fact, when you're choosing a lawyer in Texas or Oklahoma or Florida, Colorado, New York, wherever, if you're going through a divorce, simply walk into your lawyer's office or your prospective lawyer's office and ask him or her this question. Can we talk about your past clients and men and how they fared and what you got them? And then notice you'll never hear 2503. You'll never hear, well, we actually sued the municipality because they didn't enforce 2503. And out of that, we got the equity that my client needed. So the problem with lawyers is that lawyers don't work for you. They work for the judge. And the last thing a lawyer wants to do is they don't want to walk into the local judge and start talking about a federal appeal, because judges do not want to be appealed, especially on the federal level. So what does that mean? That means the lawyer works for the judge, not you. So whatever the judge's opinions are, whatever the judge's needs are, like for example, let me just be real practical here. Let's say that the local, because again, the judge awards attorney fees. Let me say that again. Whoever awards the attorney fees is who's in charge. So if your lawyer in Houston or Dallas or Oklahoma City or New York, if your lawyer knows that that judge is going to award attorney fees, who's he working for? So let's say, let me just use a practical example. If you're in Dallas, Texas, or Houston or Austin, and your lawyer goes in to that local civil case and starts talking about, well, 2503 was never enforced. It's actually a federal violation. And I want justice, or I'm going to appeal this on the federal level. What would happen to that lawyer and that judge's relationships? Well, that would be a very negative thing because no judge wants to be appealed on the federal level. So when you start looking at the relationship between judges and lawyers and who awards attorney fees and the fact that cops never enforce 2503, all that means is that men get fucked in their civil cases. In fact, just ask around, who usually wins in a civil case? Women. So this is not an anti-woman sentiment. This is me wanting to use my experience to help other men. And the answer is so simple: is hire me, buy my divorce kit, and it's going to be the best $2,800, $3,000 you ever spend, because it's going to equip you with knowledge that you're going to be able to either bring into your own civil case, or you can hold your lawyer to task. Whenever my original divorce happened, had my lawyer put in the original divorce decree, and here's some free advice. If you're going through a divorce in Texas, okay, everybody's looking online for free advice, and a lot of people don't want to actually spend the money. They'll spend $75,000 for a lawyer who gets them nothing, but they don't want to give a YouTube guy who's gone through the fucking shit $2,800. So let me give you free advice, you guys. If you're not wanting to spend my $2,800, or you don't want to spend $3,000 for my divorce kit, which came out of hard-won experience, then let me give you free advice. If you're going through a divorce in Texas, you need to make sure that everything that's asked of you is asked of her. It's called equality. Secondly, since we know that doesn't really exist and that's kind of laughable, make sure that 2503, the entire, just copy and paste that shit, make sure your lawyer or you put it in your divorce decree, because once that case is filed, if you ever have to defend your visitation rights, most cops are going to pretend like 2503 doesn't exist, and they're going to say things like, well, we don't get involved in civil matters. Well, if you have a divorce decree that speaks to 2503 in its fullness, and it's actually there, and it's boom, then at that point, you have grounds to talk to this cop, and you can simply, in a very nonviolent, very professional way, say, you can walk into your local police officer's office, or the Rice Monkey, or whoever the police chief is, and say, okay, I understand you're not wanting to defend this because you believe it's in the civil case, but Mr. Officer, Mr. Police Chief, please tell me why 2503 exists in the criminal status, in the criminal code, and then get out your camera phone and simply record that very professional, very calm, very diplomatic exchange, so that when you go to court, you can show the court, I'm trying to enforce 2503. The powers that be will not even enforce that. At that point, you are establishing the grounds of a federal appeal. And the more people involved in your case, the more people who realize that you're not speaking to local law, you're speaking to federally protected statuses. In my opinion, let me repeat myself, equity and justice for men as it stands now, this is 2016 when I'm watching this, or when you're watching this video. At this point, the only real chance beyond buying my divorce kit for $2,800 is really to understand that the solution is going to come from the federal level. And the more verbiage, the more content, the more law that you can put on the record in your case, that speaks to 2503 and federally protected classes and equality, the more, the better you are to set your case up to a federal appeal. And then once people realize, like, holy shit, he's actually serious about this equality thing, and he may take it to the federal level, at that point, you're going to hear words like, well, maybe you guys should just mediate. Or, holy shit, yeah, maybe she has to actually bring receipts. Or you may even hear something very audacious where it says something like, and I could show you this in the law, and I could, if you just buy my divorce kit, which will help empower you in your divorce proceeding, you will see that the law states that these guidelines for spousal support really are just simply guidelines. There's a lot of laws that speak to that a woman's needs and the child's needs should be viewed independent. And if you were in a divorce case and you simply put that on the record that here's A, B, C, and D law, and it speaks to there's the child's needs and there's her needs, and we can't muddy those waters, and you put that law on the table, that's going to get somebody's attention, because if she is awarded support and it puts her needs in there, and you are smart enough to have bought my my divorce kit, then at that point, if you ever go to a federal appeal, they're going to say, this was addressed. Here's the law from Fibonacci. It was ignored, and here's grounds for an appeal. And that's exactly how the divorce kit works. It's what I'm going to send you is about 3 to 4 pages of just real basic laws that you have to make sure go on the record. And without that stuff on the record, you have no leverage in an appeal. And the more people who realize that you're not really trying to win on the state level, you're trying to set your case up on the federal level, the more that you're intelligent, the more that you come in with data and hard law, the more people will go, holy shit, we need to take, maybe 2503 isn't complicated. Maybe it's actually corruption against the local police chief. And then slowly, when more and more people do that, the more and more fathers and men who have the balls to walk into a civil case and take ownership of their case, at that point, slowly the men's right movement is going to gain traction. Unfortunately, the quote says that, one of my favorite quotes says, nothing can stop an idea whose time has come. Nothing can stop an idea whose time has come. It's much like cannabis or much like abortion rights. These wars, these laws, if you will, these battles, civil rights, did not happen in 5 years and 10 years. I mean, the fact that some of these documentaries are coming out, I mean, holy shit. I mean, the next 10 years are going to be critical for men's rights, and I want to be a part of that. Well, you can either put your head in the sand, you can go find a fancy lawyer with some fancy degrees, or you can pay $2,800 and buy my divorce kit, which will pay you back in spades, because once I educate you on the laws that defend men, and once I show you how to put that on the record, if you were to go to a case or to even do a trial, at that point, you are empowered. And that's what I want to do. I want to use all my experiences and even my pain. Let my pain be your prosperity. $2,800 is kind of the basic thing, and there's some other services that I can offer you. But again, the quote says that women are crazy, men are dumb, and some men they'll spend $75,000 on lawyers, and then they'll finally find me, and then they'll email me, and they're like, what can you do? I'm like, well, you can buy my divorce kit and make sure that you're educated. And they're like, well, maybe I don't want to be educated. Well, what I wanted to say to that guy is, and he told me the ages of his children, which are really young children. And yeah, I want his money, and I want to sell another divorce kit. I'm not going to try to pretend that's not a motivation. But I also understand that if he's not smart, and he's out of Dallas, but if he's not smart, if he's not educated, he could easily lose complete access to his children. And he could be like me, going Christmas after Christmas after Christmas, or Christmas after Christmas without seeing his kids. And a lot of men do not realize how truly vulnerable they are in a civil case until after the fact. And that's what I want to make sure that I help other men avoid. What's the final quote? I guess I'm full of quotes today. Final quote is, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. My $2,800 divorce kit, again, I can help anybody in any state. My experience is based in Texas. If you're outside of Texas, just make it like $3,800 because I'm gonna have to do a lot of research specific to your state. But if you're in Texas, $2,800, any other state's $3,800. And let me bring all my experience to the table so that you're empowered. And if all I do, if you buy my $3,800 divorce kit, and if all you do is go into your civil case and win 1 or 2 or 3 of the critical battles that face men, it costs you $3,800. Or if all I do is help you with if you spend $3,800, if all you do is keep access to your kids or maintain lawful access to your kids, what's that value? So if you're interested in my divorce kit, let me help kind of be your private MRA advocate. Email me americano417@gmail.com. Again, my name is John Fibonacci. Email me americano417@gmail.com. One more time, americano417@gmail.com.